Life was just looking terrible, if I'm honest. I just saw it as waking up every day and then suffering and then going to sleep and repeating. And that was pretty much my mentality.
It was a raw excitement because he was the first grandchild on both sides of the family. There's just this joy of this new birth, but my parents left with a real gut feeling that something wasn't right. He just looked quite grey as well. Got rushed to neonatal unit, didn't know what was going on. They said there was a blockage, so we kind of obviously didn't understand the medical terms. We were thinking we'll just push it down. We didn't understand. And then it became apparent that his esophagus was disformed, and the esophagus should join and fuse about 11 weeks gestation, and his bottom bit branched onto the trachea. So he was bringing bile up from his stomach into his lungs, coughing it, and then effectively he was drowning.
I was always sick a fair bit. Didn't really understand why. It's like when I was at school, I found it hard to get out of lessons to go to the toilet in time because of this, but I never really put it together. So I was kind of living my early childhood like this and not knowing why, thinking I was different to everyone else. And it was horrible.
He was on blended food until he was 3. If you had something like a yoghurt with bits in, it was an absolute no-no because it was multiple textures. So every time we tried to wean him onto something and push his esophagus, we would quite often end up with a stricture, and that's where the esophagus just shuts right down.
I was coming back from surgery, and then I had an appointment after that, about a week after that, and they were saying they found eosinophils in my esophagus, which are white blood cells which will attack the food that they think is almost the enemy. So every time I was eating, my body was attacking itself. Fear was one of the biggest things for me because I was constantly having to think about what I was doing. I was scared if I ate out or ate at school from the canteen, there would be some kind of cross-contamination, or I would buy the wrong thing, not read it right, and then I would have an episode and I'd be sick, have my usual repercussions. I felt like giving up, which was then when my mental health just fell down completely. I couldn't sleep at night, I was having suicidal thoughts.
His dark thoughts were horrendous. It was a really, really scary time because there was nothing I could do to fix it.
I was at my lowest point I've ever been in my life. I'd given up completely, and this was the point where Mum had completely utterly given up as well. The second I stepped into the healing centre, I felt a huge presence from God, which was the most I've ever felt in my entire life. Like, it was insane how much I could feel it. It even put a smile on my face, so for me, that was rare at the time.
We kind of walked to the table, and we had communion, and I could see that Luke was starting to come over, and I said to him, I'll take the bread for you, because obviously he couldn't take communion.
I felt such a heat on me. I started sweating and everything. It was insane. My entire body just went from top to bottom. It was like going waves of heat going up and down me. As I just felt such a presence of God, and it was insane to feel that love.
He couldn't tell me, and I was like, what's he doing?
I felt God during that calling me to take the bread, and I was thinking to him, literally saying, I'll be sick again, I can't do that. And he was like, just trust me. Just trust me. That's all he said, and I was like, whatever, let's just do this.
His esophagus then went warm for an hour, and he just said, Mum, it's gone, it's gone. And I said, what's happening? I
remember standing up taller. I remember just looking around, had a huge smile on my face. I ended up crying in like, tears of joy.
In the middle of the night, he had an almighty vomit. It was huge. It was about 2, 3 in the morning, and I was up with him. And I do remember thinking, I'm not picking up fear, I'm just going to pick up sick. It's fine.
When I woke up the next day, I felt amazing, and it was almost like when I was throwing up, it was just evil being expelled from me. That's the only way me and my mum could put it, as it was like the yeast fields were being thrown up out of my esophagus, and the fear was just leaving me.
Oh my goodness.
His consultant just kind of looked up, as he is so tall, and just said, not used to my patients being as tall as this, but just shook his hand and just said, congratulations.
Once I finished everything, I had the most amazing Domino's pizza that evening. I had a whole large Domino's meat feast all to myself. It was great, I remember that.
My youngest son, again, he couldn't believe it. And I said, we can eat what we like. He said, Mama, we can go to restaurants and just order food without you asking questions for 20 minutes before we can eat. And there's just so much joy and freedom.
I'm enjoying just living. It's just, even if something bad happens to me, I've got this to hold on to, and it just puts a smile on my face.